has suffered a significant setback after the Republican-controlled U.S. Senate passed a resolution seeking to limit his administration's military involvement with Iran. Notably, the vote took place and passed by a narrow margin of 50 to 48, highlighting deep divisions within Congress and even within the Republican Party itself over the direction of U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. Well, the resolution is aimed at restricting or ending U.S. military hostilities against Iran unless Congress formally authorizes further action. It reflects growing concern among lawmakers over the continuation of conflict and the constitutional question of who holds the authority to engage the United States in prolonged military operations. Well, the vote saw an unusual bipartisan split, with 4 Republican senators breaking ranks in order to support the measure. And these include Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa of Alaska, Bill Cassidy, and Rand Paul. Well, on the Democratic side, Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania was the only Democrat who voted against the resolution, and the outcome was also influenced by the absence of 2 Republican senators, Dave of Pennsylvania and Mitch McConnell, whose non-participation further tilted the balance in favor of the resolution. And earlier, a similar measure had already cleared the U.S. House of Representatives with a 215 and 208 vote, where 4 Republicans joined Democrats in supporting the effort in order to limit presidential war powers. And despite passing both the chambers of Congress, the resolution is largely symbolic in nature as a concurrent resolution under the war powers framework. It does not require the president's signature and does not carry the force of law. This means it does not directly compel the administration to change policy or withdraw forces, but it does serve as a formal expression of Congress' stance on the issue. Officials cited in reports have suggested that the resolution will have no immediate practical impact on ongoing U.S. policy towards Iran, especially given that the administration has already indicated a ceasefire arrangement in the place. The White House has maintained that the presidential authority over military operations remains intact, and that such resolutions do not override executive powers in matters of national security. And according to the administration officials, hostilities between the U.S. and Iran have already effectively ended following a ceasefire agreement reached earlier in April. They argue that the resolution is therefore unnecessary and does not reflect the current operational reality on the ground. However, lawmakers supporting the measure strongly disagree. Democratic leaders have argued that the Constitution clearly assigns Congress the authority to declare war and approve sustained military engagements. Congressman Greg Meeks, who sponsored the resolution, said that the executive branch cannot continue military operations indefinitely without congressional approval. He emphasized that Congress must ensure its constitutional role is not sidelined in any decisions involving war and peace. Senate Majority Leader Chuck also pushed for the vote, stating that lawmakers needed to publicly go on record regarding their position of the conflict. He argued that while some Republicans privately expressed concerns about the war and the administration's handling of Iran, a formal vote was necessary in order to make their stance clear. And Senator Tim Kaine also supported the resolution, adding that even during periods of diplomatic engagement, Congress must retain oversight in order to prevent unilateral military escalation in the future. The vote comes against the backdrop of a broader diplomatic shift between the U.S. and Iran, and just last week, both the nations reportedly signed a peace agreement that is aimed at ending a conflict that had lasted more than 3 months. The agreement was signed digitally by President Donald Trump and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. Under this deal, efforts are being made in order to de-escalate tensions and resume limited diplomatic engagement. However, tensions remain unresolved, particularly around Iran's nuclear program. While Iran continues to insist that its nuclear activities are strictly for peaceful purposes, international watchdogs such as the International Atomic Energy Agency have raised concerns about the presence of highly enriched uranium in the country. And such material, according to the experts, could potentially be used for the development of nuclear weapons, making the situation highly sensitive for global security. And within the U.S., the Senate vote has intensified the ongoing debate over war powers and presidential authority. This marks the 10th time since the beginning of the year that Congress has attempted to limit presidential military action involving Iran. And the repeated efforts reflect growing unease among lawmakers from both the parties about long-term military engagement in the region and the potential for escalation without direct congressional approval. And following the Senate's decision, President Donald Trump strongly criticized the lawmakers who supported the resolution, and in a post on Truth Social, he referred to them as the grandstanders and described their actions as unpatriotic. The president maintained that his administration's actions were necessary for national security and insisted that the resolution would not affect ongoing policy or operations. And despite the heated political rhetoric, experts note that the resolution is unlikely to bring any immediate change to the US military strategy. The White House continues to assert that the president has constitutional authority to direct military operations without additional congressional approval under certain circumstances. Supporters of the resolution, however, argue that the prolonged military involvement requires legislative oversight and cannot be left solely to executive discretion. Overall, while the Senate vote represents an important symbolic rebuke of the administration and highlights growing divisions over US foreign policy, it does not change the immediate reality of US-Iran relations. Instead, it underscores a continuing power struggle between Congress and the presidency over control of military decisions, a debate that is likely to persist in the months ahead as both diplomatic and strategic tensions continue to evolve. That's all for now. Stay tuned to the Savera for more updates. Do like, comment and subscribe to the channel.